Now to our coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Officials in Moscow have accused Ukraine of launching a drone attack on a building in Moscow, causing an explosion that was heard across the city's business district. Mayor Sergei Sobyanin stated that air defenses had shot down the drone and its debris fell on the city's expo center. This marks the latest in a series of such attacks on the Russian capital. There's been no immediate comment from Ukraine, but officials in Kyiv have never formally acknowledged launching attacks on targets in Moscow. Russia's defense ministry stated that the attack occurred around 4 a.m. local time. The first vessel to use Ukraine's Black Sea corridor crossing through Turkey's Bosphorus Strait arrived safely in Istanbul on Friday. The Hong Kong flag container ship Joseph Scholz, which departed from the Russian-blocked Ukrainian Black Sea port of Odessa earlier this week, had been in the port since February 23, 2022, the day before the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Last week, Ukraine announced a humanitarian corridor in the Black Sea to release cargo ships that had been trapped in its ports after the termination of the main grain export deal last month. Moscow has not indicated whether it would respect the shipping corridor, and shipping and insurance sources have expressed concerns about safety. Local broadcasters have reported that the ship will anchor at Ambali port in the southern part of Istanbul. Russian and Chinese warships are conducting joint maritime patrols in the Pacific, involving rescue training and drills for countering airstrikes. Video released by Russian state news agency TASS shows 9 large vessels sailing in a diamond formation as crew members stood to attention on deck. A Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson said on Monday that the naval fleets of the two countries were conducting maritime patrols in western and northern regions of the Pacific, adding that the drills were not aimed at a third party and are not related to the current international and regional situation. Chinese Defense Minister Li Zhengfu visited Russia this week to attend the 11th Moscow Conference on International Security, where he called for closer military cooperation. A U.S. official says the United States has approved sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine from Denmark and the Netherlands to defend against the Russians as soon as pilot training is completed. Secretary of State Antony Blinken sent letters to his Danish and Dutch counterparts, giving assurances that the United States will expedite approval of transfer requests for F-16s to go to Ukraine when the pilots are fully trained. Denmark and the Netherlands had recently asked for those assurances for the U.S. to approve the transfer of the military jets from its allies to Ukraine. In the meantime, Ukraine has received 2 Iris-T air defense systems from Germany. Iranian President Volodymyr Zelensky made this known in his regular address. Mr. Zelensky says it's a powerful and much-needed air defense system and thanked Germany for supplying the weapons. The president also signed a decree on Thursday formalizing a decision taken last week to fire all the heads of regional recruitment officers after a nationwide investigation turned up scores of cases involving corruption and abuse. Video released by the Ukrainian president press service ahead of his evening remarks showed Mr. Zelensky accepting credentials from the ambassadors of 6 countries, including Germany, Indonesia, Sweden, Chile, Peru, and Colombia. And the head of the EU Special Training Command in Germany says Ukraine's requests for the training of its forces abroad have changed 18 months into the war, with offensive tactics and the education of military leaders now topping the list. Lieutenant General Andreas Marlow explains that at the start of the war, Kyiv had rather been keen for its troops to be trained in defensive tactics and how to fight in urban areas. Mr. Marlow was speaking at Klied's training ground, situated about 100 kilometers west of Berlin, minutes after Ukrainian troops had fired 105mm rounds with Leopard 1 tanks they had been training to operate over the past 5 weeks. Muzzle flashes could be seen even before the cracks of the shots were heard, and dust clouds rose where the shells hit their wooden targets on a shooting range marked by the tracks of the tanks that rumbled back and forth through the mud. As part of the EU military mission, Western troops have trained some 6,200 Ukrainians in Germany this year in a wide range of skills stretching from operating advanced air defense systems such as the Iris-T to driving and firing modern tanks such as the Leopard 2. In contrast to its successor, the Leopard 1 has been around since the 1960s, though the Ukrainians are being supplied with a more advanced version that was standard at the end of 1980s. The Ukrainian troops training includes already the fifth rotation since Germany and Denmark announced they would pay the industry to refurbish at least 100 Leopard 1 tanks, some of which had been mothballed for 20 years, to send them to Kyiv.